Okay, thank you so much for everyone for being here. I'm Electra Pizzi. I'm one of the producers on Good Boy, and I'll be moderating tonight. If I can please ask for all the press to have their cameras and microphones switched off, we will be welcoming any questions you have. Just type them into the chat, and I'll do a little bit of a chat with Tom, Ben, and Marion to introduce the project, and then I'll open it up to questions. So today here with us, we have Tom Stuart, which is the director and writer of the film, and Ben Whishaw and Marion Bailey on sound only from the depths of Cornwall. So yeah, I guess I would start asking Tom, let's start from the beginning. How did the film come about, and what prompted you to tell this story in the first place?
Well, I suppose it was twofold. The first thing is that I had this very funny, outrageous, kind, loving, brilliant mum that I was very, very close to. And unfortunately, she died at the beginning of the pandemic. And um, this film is really me trying to work out what to do with that loss. And so when it happened, I needed an outlet, and I needed to sort of explore what was happening for me and what was happening with grief. I'd never experienced it before. And so that was where the sort of genesis of the idea came from. And yeah, so that's really, really the start of it. It's really an exploration of my grief and my relationship with my brilliant mum, basically. But the sort of genesis of it actually beginning was in fact Mr. Ben Whishaw, who I've known for a long time, and we went for a walk together during the pandemic when we were allowed to go for walks. And we went for a long walk along the Thames in London, and I was telling him everything that I was up to and that, and sort of out of the blue, I remember it like this anyway. Ben suggested that I'd be really good at directing and that I should give it a go. And then I was like, oh well, actually, I've got this idea, and then I rushed home to write it basically, and then a few months later sent it to Ben, and luckily he said yes. So that's really where the both the genesis of the idea began, and also where the actual project started was with Ben.
And what made you think, oh, I really want to direct this one? Because you come from a background of being an actor for many years, and then you moved into screenwriting, and this is your first film.
Yeah, I suppose because it's such a personal story that and I had such a strong vision for what it would look like and what I felt like it needed to be, and because it was so personal, I wanted to be in full control of it, I suppose. But also just very excited about it. As soon as I had the idea, really, I could see it, and I could see exactly what I felt like it looked like, and so uh, I wanted to sort of take the helm, really. And as I say, it's also something that I've always wanted to do. I've been wanting to direct for a long time, so this just felt like a very it all felt very organic and natural, to be honest. It sort of happened quite easily.
Right. And Ben, coming to you, what would you say was the most exciting part of developing a character like this one? Um, and knowing Tom well as well, how was that development for you?
Um, well, it was really nice because obviously we're friends and we have a history that goes back a long way, and that really helps the kind of discussion and the work that you do. I guess because in a way you don't have to talk so much about it. You don't have to spend so much time getting to know one another or knowing what one another mean when they say certain things. One another mean easy. It was quite straightforward. Easy. I can hear my voice echoing.
Yeah, so can I?
I'm sorry, Ben. We're getting a little bit of echo from an iPhone.
I think someone just needs to put their Zoom on mute. So
Yes. For those who have joined late, if you don't mind, please putting the microphones on mute, that'd be great. Sorry, Ben, carry on.
Okay, I wasn't saying anything very interesting, I realized.
Yes,
But
you
like,
were. You were saying that there was a shorthand between us, which I think is so true. That
yeah, there was a shorthand, and I really appreciated that and really enjoyed that. And it wasn't very like intellectual or very, I didn't feel it was very or analytical. It was more feeling, wasn't it? I felt like the whole film was
yeah,
kind of based on feelings.
yeah, absolutely. And I felt like you understood, well, because exactly what you're saying, because you know me and you sort of, you could tap into what I was feeling about my grief very quickly. And also, it really helped, we should say, that you knew my mum. So that,
Yeah.
and the tone of the tone of the film is very much imbued with her character, isn't it? And her anarchy and her sensibility and her warmth. And so I think that really helped. And it certainly helped me sort of direct you, is that I felt like we had a shorthand there because the tone of the film was set by someone else that we both knew, if that makes
I think
sense.
that's really true. I hadn't thought of it quite like that. And Marion didn't meet your mum, but is somehow so much like your mum
Yeah.
in spirit. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
film, I mean, not really so much.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Great.
Y-
And did you find that preparing for a short film compared to the long form roles that you usually have, was that different?
It's only different in the sense that it's 4 days working rather than more days. You know, it's not really any different what you do, I don't think, at all, actually. No,
Right,
just the scale of it's different. Yeah.
right. Going on to Marion, if you're here with us. Oh,
Oh, I've got a feeling we might have lost Marion.
okay. She'll come back. I guess then keep you on to Ben then. How was Tom as a first-time director? Like having come from an acting background as well, like how did you find his directing style compared to other maybe other directors who don't come from acting?
Well, I guess, well, one I think I would say is that I don't think because necessarily just because you've acted or you are an actor that would enable you to be a good director of actors. I don't think the two things necessarily go together at all. I, for example, feel like I'd be terrible at directing actors. But Tom sort of knew how to speak to me and to Marion and the rest of the cast, and was not afraid of us. I think that sometimes directors can be fearful of actors, um, and Tom just has like brilliant taste and judgment and knows how to communicate. I always remember like there was one scene when he was like, no, more economical, up, down. He'd give you really specific things, or like certain, and it takes kind of experience, but also sort of courage and I don't know, trust or something to be able to go this without an actor feeling like they're um, being given something very prescriptive to do, which was not the case. It was just like, it was more about precision and about unlocking things. I think
Yeah,
he,
I
I
felt.
think he was so impressive. I loved it.
Ah, thanks, mate. I mean, I feel like, just from my perspective, I feel like was so lucky because could just say Ben and Marion are such finely tuned performers that you could just say the smallest thing to them and they would run with it and make it far better than I could have ever have hoped for. But they're so open and smart and good at what they do that you can just give them a small suggestion of a feeling or a thought or a slightly different intonation on something or whatever it is, and they can just adapt to it so quickly and so beautifully. So it's lovely to hear Ben say that you know, that I did a good job. But I think it's mainly because of the actors I had, really.
And Ben, is there any trait of the character that has stuck with you and that you've taken away and kept?
No, I tend not to really. I never really feel that way about characters, at least not that I'm aware of. Maybe somewhere deep subconsciously or something. But one thing I did really take away was being being in this material in Somerset, in that landscape. That sort of stayed with me in a deep way or something. Or I know I'll always cherish it and always remember it. And I don't know, it just felt very special. Something special kind of was in the air. I can't explain it better than that. So that sort of feels like that memory of that is inside me.
And
And actually, oh, sorry, Electra, I was going to say that's actually one of the questions as well. Someone's asked, how long did we shoot from? Where was it? Just because that ties in with what Ben said is, I mean, we shot it over 4 days. And we were really, really lucky because we were given very, very rare permission to shoot on Worthy Farm, which is the site of the biggest music festival in the world, which is Glastonbury Festival, which is an extraordinary place for lots of reasons. But there is something very sort of mystical and calm and warm about the land, isn't there? And I felt like not only was it a privilege because they never allow it, and because it's so beautiful, and it gives the you know, the film such a beautiful look because we're just in this incredible untouched countryside, really, British countryside. But also there is an energy about the place that sort of trickled all the way through exactly what Ben said, sort of trickled all the way through the shoot, and I felt like everyone was sort of oddly calm and open and generous and warm. You know what I mean? We were lucky with the cast and crew we had. Everyone was amazing, but I think everyone had this sort of sense of calm about them, which I'm sure was to do with the land that we were filming on.
For sure. I'm gonna now open it, since we've picked from a question, let's open it up more widely. One of the first questions that came in was the appearances of different figures and doctors that pop up in Danny's imagination. What do each of them represent to you when you wrote, I suppose, to start with, Tom?
Yeah, I suppose so. The idea was that when I was in the thick of grief at the very beginning, I was basically, grief looked nothing like I thought it was going to look like. I thought it was going to be a lot of me not being able to get out of bed and crying with the curtains shut, and you know, there was a lot of that as well. But what sort of surprised me is how surprising grief is, and it kind of comes in all these different forms and sort of jumps out at you at all these different from all these different angles. And I'd never really seen that represented before on TV or film. And so I felt I remember very clearly like being in you know, trying to get on with my day, like being at the supermarket or something and trying to choose what I was going to eat for dinner that night. And then suddenly I'd be like ambushed by a memory of the doctor that looked after my mum when she was dying, or the nurse that gave us mum's prognosis at the time, or you know. And so that's really what's happening in the film. So that's the idea, that's where the premise of it came from, is that Danny's trying to get on with his day, but he's being ambushed by different figures of his unprocessed grief.
Right. And a question for Ben from Mexico. What was a funny part of filming, and was there any anecdotes or behind the scenes that you would like to share?
God, I'm always quite rubbish at these sorts of questions. Well, the great thing was being with my friend Tom and being with him while he was discovering really that he could direct, and that he enjoyed it. That was very beautiful, because sometimes filming can be very stressful and not really very enjoyable, and you can feel that the director might not, you can feel that the director is not really enjoying themselves. And I felt like Tom was really enjoying the whole experience, and it felt creative and free and full of life. And so that's a very general thing to say, but that is what I felt. And also working with Marion, because I've loved Marion's work for decades, since I saw Meantime when I was very young. And we got to hang out in a horse box for 4 days in Glastonbury and just natter. We chatted about everything under the sun. It was lovely, so lovely.
Right.
I know a funny
really
thing that happened,
anecdotes,
Ben.
but
Do
that's
you know
what
what about the anecdote of where we thought the car was going to blow up?
Oh, that was quite funny. Yeah, there was. So we had that lovely camper van. What was the lovely man who owned that camper van?
Dave.
Dave, bless him. Yeah, so that camper van, we did drive that camper van a lot, didn't we? We worked it.
You did, yeah.
I did. I really loved driving it. And but anyway, it started to smoke in quite a concerning way, didn't it? Belching out dark smoke. I was like, oh, I think I should get out.
In the middle of a take, when you were at the front, you were driving, and suddenly this dark smoke came out of the dashboard, didn't it? And like engulfed the interior of the van. And I can't believe, I mean, luckily it was all fine, and we had lots of safety people on hand to make sure that everything was okay, and the van was totally fine, but it was just sort of weird. I think this is a very old van. This sort of weird thing happened, but I couldn't believe how calm you were, because I thought that was the end of the film. Because if we lost the van, we lost the whole of the. And you just very gamely wafted this. Once we realised it was all right, you just sort of wafted all this dark smoke away and got back in and started driving. And it's like, I can't. And then did like a really big emotional scene.
The show must go on, Tom.
The show must go on, Ben. We learnt nothing else.
Right. And Tom, now the film is shortlisted for an Oscar, which is incredibly exciting, and we'll find out more on the 23rd of January. How does it feel for your debut film to have gotten this far and receive so much appreciation?
I mean, it's incredibly hard to articulate. I mean, with words, I could get up and do a big dance, and that might that might that might more closely express how I feel than words. But I mean, it means the absolute world to me. Of course, it's a really personal film, so to feel it, this feels like a celebration of my mum. It's a love letter to that. So for it to be celebrated so much in this way, it just feels very personally fantastic. But of course, also as a filmmaker, to have to be receiving from my first film, to be receiving these accolades is just extraordinary. And the Oscars, I used to stay up every night when I was a kid in London. And obviously the Oscars were on in the middle of the night for us because of the time difference. And I used to stay up with the TV almost muted, so my parents didn't hear me, and I would watch the whole thing without them knowing, and then go to school completely exhausted because I felt so fed and alive from having watched it. So the Oscars have been with me my entire life, and so to be recognised in this way and to be shortlisted is a dream come true. And it's absolutely mind-blowing.
And for both of you, a question from the Hollywood Times. What lessons would you like the viewers to take from Good Boy? What's the biggest takeaway you'd like the audience to have?
Well, that's a good question. I think to not be afraid to face your emotions, and the trickier parts of our emotions and our feelings, and not to bottle them up, and keep them to ourselves, the more we express them, the easier things become. And I think that would be the biggest takeaway, along with really love the people in your life and really appreciate them while they're around, and try to honor them when they've gone.
Great. And we have time for one more question. Is there a possible sequel to Good Boy? We are being asked.
Yeah, I think there definitely is. I think there's room for, I mean, I'm going to give it a lot of thought, but I think there's definitely room for a feature. And I've got a lot of ideas about how that could happen and what would happen with that. So yeah, fingers crossed. I think there's room for to keep exploring these characters and this world for sure. And the chance to work with Ben and Marion again would be, too precious to sort of not grasp and try and make happen.
Wonderful. Well, that takes us to the end of the time we have today. So thank you everyone for joining this Zoom. It was wonderful chatting to Tom and Ben. If you were to have any additional questions, please do reach out to London Flair, who will be happy to lie us back. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.